November 3, 1952. Manhattan Criminal Court, Room 403. Bumpy Johnson sits at the defendant's table, hands folded, face calm as stone. Judge Harold Morrison looks down from his bench and asks one simple question. 12 seconds later, every person in that courtroom turns against the most powerful man in Harlem. What Bumpy said in those 12 seconds would cost him everything he built over 20 years. The courtroom is packed. 240 people squeeze into seats meant for 150. Reporters line the back wall, cameras ready. Federal agents stand by every exit. District Attorney Frank Hogan sits at the prosecution table, a stack of files 3 feet high beside him. He's been trying to put Bumpy Johnson away for 8 years. Today might finally be his day. Bumpy wears a navy blue suit, custom tailored from Lenox Avenue. His shoes shine like mirrors. At 45 years old, he controls every number's racket, policy bank, and protection operation from 110th Street to 155th Street. The man who sits so calmly has 40,000 people on his payroll. Judges, cops, politicians, street runners. Everyone takes Bumpy's money. Everyone except the man on the bench today. Judge Morrison is new. Appointed 3 months ago. He doesn't take bribes. Doesn't look the other way. The Tammany Hall bosses who usually fix these things couldn't touch him. That's why this trial is different. That's why Bumpy's lawyers are nervous. That's why the Italian mob sent 3 observers to sit in the gallery and watch. If you want the full truth about what happened in that courtroom, hit like so this story reaches more people who need to understand how one man's honesty changed Harlem forever. The charges against Bumpy are simple. Conspiracy, racketeering, operating illegal gambling enterprises. The evidence is not simple. Hogan has ledgers, photographs, witness statements, recorded phone calls. He's built his case like a fortress. Every brick in place. Every witness ready. This morning he called his star witness to the stand. Raymond Lewis. Bumpy's accountant for 12 years. The man who kept every book, recorded every payment, knew every name. Raymond walks to the witness stand with his head down. He won't look at Bumpy. Can't look at Bumpy. Because 3 weeks ago, the FBI picked up Raymond at his daughter's school. They showed him pictures. His daughter getting on the bus. His daughter at the playground. His daughter walking home. They never said the words. Didn't have to. Raymond understood. Testify or lose everything that matters. Raymond talks for 90 minutes. Names, dates, months. He tells the court about payments to Police Captain Morris at the 28th Precinct. $5,000 every month in a brown envelope. He describes the numbers operation. How runners collect bets from 300 locations across Harlem. How the money flows up through 5 levels of collectors before reaching Bumpy. How they process $2 million every single week. The jury leans forward. 12 men who've never seen this kind of money in their lives. They hear about cash stuffed in walls, hidden in piano benches, buried in Riverside Park. They hear how Bumpy paid for schools, church repairs, medical bills for families who couldn't afford doctors. But they also hear the numbers. The math doesn't lie. $2 million a week is $104 million a year. All illegal. All untaxed. All controlled by the man in the navy blue suit. Hogan stands and asks Raymond one final question. Mr. Lewis, in your 12 years working for Ellsworth, Bumpy Johnson, did you ever witness him commit a violent act? The courtroom goes silent. Raymond's hands shake. He takes a sip of water. Looks at the ceiling. Then he nods. Yes. I saw him kill a man. Comment Justice if you believe what happened next exposed the real truth about power in America. The gasps echo through the courtroom. Judge Morrison bangs his gavel 3 times. Order. Raymond continues. March 8, 1949. A man named Tommy Rizzo came to Bumpy's office at the Rhythm Club. Tommy worked for the Genovese family. Wanted Bumpy to cut them into the numbers racket. 50% of everything. Bumpy said no. Tommy pulled a gun. Bumpy was faster. 3 shots. Tommy died on the floor of that office before the ambulance arrived. Hogan lets that sink in. Murder. Witnessed. Testified. Then he sits down. The defense table is quiet. Bumpy's lead attorney, Malcolm Reeves, the best criminal lawyer in New York City, has nothing. Can't cross-examine facts. Can't dispute what Raymond saw. All he can do is stand, straighten his tie, and ask Raymond about the context. Mr. Lewis, did Tommy Rizzo point his weapon at Mr. Johnson first? Raymond nods. Then my client acted in self-defense. The judge writes something down. Doesn't look impressed. The prosecution rests. It's 4:30 in the afternoon. Judge Morrison wants to continue. Asks the defense if they plan to call witnesses. Reeves stands. Your Honor, we call one witness. The defendant, Ellsworth Johnson. Every head in the courtroom turns. Bumpy doesn't flinch. He rises slowly, buttons his jacket, walks to the witness stand. His steps are measured, confident. He's been in courtrooms before. Been in worse situations. Survived things that would break normal men. He places his hand on the Bible and swears to tell the truth. The whole truth. Nothing but the truth. Then he sits and waits. Reeves asks basic questions first. Where were you born, Mr. Johnson? Charleston, South Carolina. October 31st, 1905. When did you move to Harlem? 1919. I was 14 years old. What was your first job? Working at a grocery store on Lenox Avenue. $12 a week. The jury watches Bumpy speak. His voice is calm. No street accent. No slang. He sounds like a businessman. Which is exactly what he is. Reeves moves into the numbers game. Mr. Johnson, the prosecution claims you run an illegal gambling operation. Is that true? Bumpy pauses. Looks at the jury. I run a community service. People in Harlem can't get bank loans. Can't get insurance. Can't get help when their kids are sick or their rent is due. The numbers game gives them hope. A chance. I take their nickels and dimes, and when they win, I pay them. Every time. No one in Harlem goes hungry because of me. Can the banks say that? Can the insurance companies say that? The jury shifts. Some nod slightly. They've heard about Bumpy. The man who pays for funerals. Who keeps stores open during hard times. Who makes sure kids have Christmas presents. But they also know the law. Illegal is illegal. Doesn't matter if you're Robin Hood. You still stole. Type yes if you want to see how Bumpy's answer to the next question changed everything in 12 seconds. Reeves asks about the shooting. Mr. Johnson, did you kill Tommy Rizzo? Bumpy doesn't hesitate. Yes. He came to my office. Demanded half my business. When I refused, he drew his weapon. I defended myself. Reeves nods. And you reported this to the police? Bumpy's expression changes. Just for a second. No. I handled it privately. Reeves knows this is weak. Why didn't you report it? Bumpy looks at the judge. Because the police in Harlem don't investigate deaths in my community the way they investigate deaths in other communities. I knew Tommy's family would come looking. I prepared for that. But I didn't trust the legal system to see it as self-defense when a black man shoots a white man, even in my own office. The courtroom murmurs. Judge Morrison's face hardens. He doesn't like this answer. Doesn't like what it implies about his system. About his courts. Reeves sees the problem. Tries to redirect. Asks about the community work. The schools. The churches. Gets Bumpy talking about the Harlem Renaissance. About Marcus Garvey. About building something that white America tried to destroy. Then Reeves sits down. No further questions, Your Honor. Hogan stands immediately. The district attorney has been waiting for this. He walks to the witness stand slowly. Lets the tension build. Then he smiles. It's not a friendly smile. Mr. Johnson, you testified that you run a community service. Is that correct? Bumpy nods. That's what I said. Hogan pulls a ledger from his stack of evidence. This ledger shows you collected $38,000 in 1 week last July. From people betting on numbers. How much of that $38,000 went to community services? Bumpy doesn't answer immediately. Some of it. Hogan presses. How much? 10,000? 5,000? 1,000? Bumpy stays quiet. Mr. Johnson, isn't it true that less than 5% of your gambling revenue goes to community programs? Bumpy's jaw tightens. The percentages don't tell the whole story. Hogan turns to the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, 5% of $38,000 is $1,900. Mr. Johnson keeps $36,100. Every week. That's not a community service. That's a criminal enterprise with good public relations. The jury looks at Bumpy differently now. The numbers change things. Always do. Hogan walks back to his table. Picks up another document. Mr. Johnson, you mentioned Marcus Garvey. The man who wanted to take black Americans back to Africa. Are you familiar with his philosophy? Bumpy nods. I am. Hogan continues. Did Garvey believe in working within the American legal system? Bumpy pauses. No. He believed the system was designed to oppress black people. Hogan nods. So you align yourself with someone who rejected American law. Yet you want this jury to believe you respect the legal process. Share this video so communities understand what was really happening in courtrooms across America. Reeves jumps up. Objection. The witness's political beliefs are not on trial here. Judge Morrison considers. I'll allow it. The witness opened this door by bringing up Garvey himself. Continue, Mr. Hogan. Hogan steps closer to Bumpy. Mr. Johnson, you killed a man in your office. Then you buried him in New Jersey. Paid off the police. Made the body disappear. Is that respecting the law? Bumpy's eyes narrow. I protected myself and my people. Hogan raises his voice. Your people? Or your criminal empire? The courtroom buzzes. Judge Morrison lets it continue for a moment. Then he bangs his gavel. Order. But the damage is done. Hogan has Bumpy exactly where he wants him. Defensive. Emotional. Making it about race and politics instead of facts and law. The jury doesn't like it. You can see it on their faces. This isn't about civil rights. This is about a criminal who happens to be black using his community as a shield. Hogan goes back to his table. Sits down. Looks at his notes. Then he stands again. Your Honor, I have one final question for the witness. Judge Morrison nods. Proceed. The courtroom is dead silent. Everyone knows something big is coming. You can feel it. The tension in the air. The way Hogan walks to the center of the room. The way Bumpy sits up straighter. Hogan looks directly at Bumpy Johnson. Mr. Johnson, you've testified that you run a community service. That you help people in Harlem. That everything you do is for the betterment of your community. Is that correct? Bumpy nods. Yes. Hogan pauses. Lets the moment build. Then he asks the question. If you care so much about your community, why do you live in a mansion in Riverdale? Why do your children attend private schools in Connecticut? Why does your wife shop on Fifth Avenue while the people who make you rich struggle to pay rent in tenement buildings? The question hangs in the air. Judge Morrison leans forward. The jury stares at Bumpy. The reporters grip their pens. This is it. The moment. Everything depends on what Bumpy says next. How he answers. What words he chooses. He has 12 seconds before the judge demands a response. 12 seconds to save his reputation. 12 seconds to explain. Bumpy Johnson looks at the district attorney. Then he looks at the jury. Then he speaks. Because I can. If this shocked you, comment truth below so we can discuss what this moment really meant. 2 words. 12 seconds of silence before them. 10 seconds of silence after. The courtroom erupts. Judge Morrison's gavel cracks like thunder. Order, order. But there is no order. The jury members look at each other. Eyebrows raised. Mouths open. The reporters scribble frantically. The Italian mob observers smile. They know what just happened. Bumpy just destroyed himself. Hogan doesn't say another word. Doesn't need to. He walks back to his table and sits down. No further questions, Your Honor. Reeves tries to do damage control. Stands for redirect. Your Honor, may I ask the witness to clarify his statement? Judge Morrison looks at Bumpy with disgust. I think the statement was perfectly clear, Counselor. The witness may step down. Bumpy walks back to the defense table. His face shows nothing. No emotion. No regret. He sits down like he just ordered lunch. But the trial is over. Everyone knows it. The jury knows it. The judge knows it. Bumpy knows it. Those 2 words killed any sympathy he might have had. Because I can. The most honest and most damning answer he could give. Reeves leans over. Whispers urgently. Why did you say that? Why? Bumpy looks at his lawyer. Because it's the truth. I built an empire. I earned the right to live how I want. I'm not going to apologize for being successful. Reeves puts his head in his hands. You just gave them exactly what they wanted. You proved you're not some community hero. You're just another criminal who got rich exploiting poor people. Closing arguments happen the next day. Hogan stands and doesn't need dramatic language. He just repeats Bumpy's words. Because I can. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the defendant sat on that stand and told you everything you need to know. He doesn't run a community service. He runs a criminal organization that makes him rich while the people he claims to help stay poor. He lives in a mansion. His family enjoys privilege. And when asked why he doesn't live in the community he claims to serve, he said, because I can. That's not a leader. That's a predator. The jury deliberates for 4 hours. They come back at 6:15 in the evening. Judge Morrison asks the foreman if they've reached a verdict. Yes, Your Honor. On all counts, we find the defendant guilty. Bumpy doesn't react. Just nods once. Like he expected it. Like he knew the moment he said those words what would happen. Judge Morrison sets sentencing for 2 weeks later. November 17, 1952. Bumpy arrives in the same navy blue suit. The courtroom is even more packed than before. Every newspaper in New York sent reporters. Every radio station sent correspondents. The man who controlled Harlem is about to fall. The judge looks down at Bumpy. Mr. Johnson, you had an opportunity to show remorse. To explain yourself. To demonstrate that you understand the severity of your crimes. Instead, you sat in my courtroom and displayed arrogance. Contempt for the law. Contempt for the people you claim to serve. Your answer to Mr. Hogan's question revealed your true character. Because I can. Those words will follow you for the rest of your life. He pauses. The courtroom is silent. I hereby sentence you to 15 years in federal prison. You will serve your time at Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary. You will be eligible for parole after 10 years. May God have mercy on your soul. The gavel falls. Bumpy is led away in handcuffs. No expression on his face. No words to the reporters shouting questions. Just silence. The next day, every newspaper in America runs the same headline. Bumpy Johnson, because I can. The New York Times quotes those 2 words. The Herald Tribune builds an entire editorial around them. The Amsterdam News, Harlem's black newspaper, runs a front-page story about betrayal. How the man who was supposed to lift the community just proved he was using them all along. Within a week, Bumpy's organization falls apart. The Italian mob moves into Harlem. Takes over the numbers rackets. The protection schemes. The policy banks. Everything Bumpy built over 20 years disappears in 7 days. His 40,000 employees lose their income. The stores he protected get robbed. The families he helped struggle. Because Bumpy isn't there. And his 12-second answer proved he never really cared about being there in the first place. At Alcatraz, Bumpy spends his days in a cell overlooking the San Francisco Bay. Guards say he rarely talks. Reads constantly. Philosophy. History. Malcolm X visits him twice. They discuss power, community, and the price of honesty. Malcolm later writes about those visits. Says Bumpy told him something important. I said, because I was tired of pretending. Tired of being what they wanted me to be. A noble criminal. A Robin Hood. I'm a businessman who chose crime as my business. That's the truth. The truth destroyed me. But lies would have destroyed me slower. If you want more untold stories about the real kings of Harlem and what their choices cost them, hit that subscribe button. Comment below which figure you want to hear about next. And share this video because the real history of power in America needs to be told. Not the sanitized version. Not the mythology. The truth. Even when the truth sounds like, because I can. Bumpy serves 10 years. Gets released in 1963. Returns to Harlem a changed man. Quieter. more careful. He rebuilds parts of his organization but never reaches the same heights. The 12 seconds in that courtroom follow him everywhere. Every article about him mentions it. Every biography includes it. Every documentary plays it. People debate what he meant. Some say it was pride. Some say it was honesty. Some say it was stupidity. Bumpy himself never explains further. When reporters ask about that day in court, he just smiles. I said what I said. Let history decide what it means. History decided. Those 2 words became a symbol of how honesty can destroy you, of how the truth about power makes people uncomfortable, of how we want our heroes to be perfect and our villains to be obvious. Bumpy Johnson was neither. He was a man who built an empire, helped his community when it suited him, and lived in luxury because he could. The courtroom turned against him not because he was guilty. Everyone knew he was guilty. They turned against him because he stopped pretending. Because for 12 seconds, he dropped the mask and showed them who he really was. A man who chose power over everything else. A man who enjoyed the rewards of that power. A man who looked at a judge, a jury, and a courtroom full of people and told them the one truth they didn't want to hear. I don't live in the community I claim to serve because I don't have to. Because I'm richer than you. Because I'm smarter than you. Because I can. That's the story of how 12 seconds destroyed a king. How 2 words ended an empire. How one question from a judge exposed the difference between a leader and a boss. Bumpy Johnson controlled Harlem. But he never belonged to Harlem. And the moment everyone realized that, they let him fall. Because you can't rule people who understand you're only there for yourself. You can't be a legend when your legend is built on exploitation. You can't say, because I can, and expect loyalty from people who can't. November 3, 1952. A judge asked one question. Bumpy Johnson answered in 12 seconds. The courtroom turned. The city turned. History turned. All because a man chose truth over tactics. Honesty over heroism. 2 words over 2 decades of carefully constructed mythology. Because I can. The 3 most expensive words Bumpy Johnson ever spoke.